Welcome to the Your Leadership Legacy podcast. My name is Tina Paulus Kraus, and I'm so excited to bring you this next podcast dedicated to you high performers out there who want to reinvent yourself, reinvent your business, maybe your career, all of it. This podcast is all about being dedicated to transformation and being the best possible leader of yourself and others that you can be in order to create a legacy that lives on. Welcome to Your Leadership Legacy. My name is Tina Paulus Kraus. I am the founder and CEO of True You Teams. And here we go. Welcome, everyone, to Your Leadership Legacy podcast. We have another episode, and I am super excited about this episode. We have Kim Campbell on the show today. So hi, Kim.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm going to read your bio because everybody absolutely has to hear your bio. I couldn't even hardly sleep last night because I'm so excited to have you on the show. So I'm going to read your bio and then have you introduce yourself and give us a little bit more information about you. So let me read this. So most widely recognized for her combat experience in Operation Iraqi Freedom, Kim, quote unquote, killer chick, which is what I love the most about this bio, KC Campbell, received the Distinguished Flying Cross for Heroism when the airplane she was flying while supporting ground troops was hit with a surface-to-air missile. She was able to successfully save her wounded A-10 aircraft and recover back to base, a daring feat only accomplished successfully once before. Kim is a distinguished graduate from the United States Air Force Academy. She is a Marshall Scholar with 2 master's degrees, one in business admin from the University of London and one in international security studies from the University of Reading, England. I should know this. It's Reading, England, right? Am I pronouncing it right? Okay. She has served as a Squadron Commander, Operations Group Commander, Air Force Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council, and Military Assistant to the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. She's a command pilot with 1,800 hours in the A-10, including 375 combat hours. She has flown combat missions in Operation Southern Watch, Enduring Freedom, and Iraqi Freedom. Kim is still serving in the Air Force, currently assigned to the United States Air Force Academy as the Chair, Air Power Innovation and Integration, Department of Military and Strategic Studies. Kim is married to Colonel Scott Campbell and has 2 sons. So welcome to the show, Kim.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your background. So if you could just give us, tell us who you are and this amazing background that you have.
Sure. So I have served in the Air Force for 23 years, and I'm actually getting ready to retire in May, which is exciting to go on to our next adventure. And my husband and I have both served, both active duty, both A-10 pilots, and we have 2 young boys. They're 7 and 11, and it's time for us to kind of move on to the next adventure, and we're excited for what comes next. It's been a wild ride along the way. There have been ups and downs and challenges, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I've truly enjoyed my time in service. Certainly it has taught me a lot about myself, a lot about leadership, and having the opportunity to lead teams throughout the world in a wide variety of missions. And so I'm thankful for my opportunity to serve in the Air Force, but I'm also excited for what comes next.
Yes, well, definitely. I come from a military family as well. I forgot to tell you that before we started to record. And so I want to thank you, first of all, before we even go any further, for your service. It's so important, and not enough people thank our servicemen and women for that, and the families that serve as well. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. The families are important because my kids have been through a lot and a lot of moves. And, it's interesting right now with everything going on, I think it's important we, in terms of service, we look beyond just the military. And I have so many friends and family that are serving on the front lines, if you will, in terms of the nurses and doctors. And I'm thankful for them. I'm thankful for their service and their courage to go out and do what they do every day in this environment.
Yeah, it's definitely a new kind of soldier, right?
Yes.
I got an email the other day. I got to tell you this. I got an email a couple of days ago. I had sent out to my list an email about, just thank you for your service and all that. And I got an email from a law enforcement person. So somebody that was in the police, and talking about, they're on the front lines and stuff like that. So I want to acknowledge them as well, because I was like, oh, we have, we're not acknowledging them, and they really should be acknowledged during this
That's
time.
very true. And our EMTs and paramedics, and yeah, the list is endless. And it's encouraging, to see that people are willing to step up in these difficult times, and the people that are coming out of retirement to go help serve in hospitals. And I'm thankful for them.
Yes. My brother retired from the military, and we had a virtual Zoom surprise retirement party for him.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. There were tears all over the place. I was like, I don't know, these are military. Will we have tears? And there was tears everywhere. So
sure.
it was very special. So what comes next for you after retirement?
I am planning to do some public speaking. I have been going out to different companies to talk about kind of some of the lessons learned in the military and my lessons from combat. And it's amazing because the connections are there. I mean, with the struggles and challenges and things and the leadership, I mean, it doesn't matter what the company is, all the lessons still apply. And so if I can share a little bit about what I've learned without people having to go through combat and those challenges, it's been really fun to do it so far. I'd like to continue to do that. And I'm also working on a book, which is a bit of a longer process right now. But, it's been fun kind of looking back, not just at my career, but how the Air Force has changed and how the role of women has changed. And so that's been a really fun process. So that's the short term, in addition to spending more time with my kids and having a little bit more control over my schedule.
Yeah, that's great. Leadership is leadership.
Absolutely.
We lead in our families. I think so often people think that you need to have a title at the end of your name in order to be a quote unquote leader. And we are leaders all over. We lead our families, we lead our communities, we lead business, military. Leadership is all over the place. So I love that you talk a little bit about women in leadership. So give us a little bit high level of just, what you've seen in your career in regards to the evolution of women in leadership.
Sure. When I decided I wanted to be a fighter pilot in 1986, and I know the date because I decided that when the Challenger accident occurred, there was a moment for me of realizing that the astronauts died doing something that they believed in so strongly that they were willing to give their life. And so that was the trajectory that I decided I wanted my life to take, to, join the military, be a fighter pilot, ideally get to be an astronaut someday. But that was my plan. I had no idea that women actually weren't allowed to be fighter pilots then. I just didn't know it. There were women astronauts. Why wouldn't there have been women fighter pilots?
Yeah.
And thankfully, my parents really didn't tell me that. They didn't discourage me from doing it. They just encouraged me to work hard and go after what I wanted. By the time I went to the Air Force Academy, women were finally allowed to be fighter pilots. But as an A-10 pilot, I was one of the only women in my squadron for a long time in terms of being a pilot in the squadron. And women make up a very small percentage of fighter pilots. And it has improved over time, but we are certainly still an anomaly and still a minority in terms of the numbers. But I will tell you, the thing that I've learned over time is that gender doesn't matter. What matters is credibility. And if you are good at what you do and you are credible in the airplane, then that takes care of most of the issues out there. And as I progressed and rank and got the opportunities to lead and command, it was all about being good at what I did, working hard at it, having a good attitude, and creating an environment where my team could excel. And to me, just gender wasn't an issue. I mean, I knew that I was a bit of an anomaly, and that I was unique just because looking around, there weren't other people that looked like me. But I just found that, flying fighters and flying in combat, gender wasn't an issue. It's all about being credible. It's all about having the skills necessary to go out and do what you do.
So what advice would you give women, and not only from a fighter pilot perspective, but in business and career and, whatever it is that females are doing? What advice do you have for them when, because in our lives, we grow up with the programming of, no, you can't do that, or that's never been done, or whatever. So what advice do you have for women that get stuck in that? Because you didn't get stuck in that. You were able to move through that. And what helped you move through it?
So first off, I think it's not setting limits for ourselves, right? There are people that might try to set limits for us. There's society and rules that might set those limits. And I quite honestly just ignored them. I mean, when I was in high school, I did a high school debate about women in the military and women in combat. And it was kind of the first time I realized that women weren't allowed to hold many positions. And I just decided, well, you know, quite honestly, that doesn't make any sense. I'm just going to go for it. And so we need to not set limits for ourselves or let other people set limits for it, for us. We just need to go after it and stay committed to it. And I go back to the credibility piece, right? You want to be good at what you do. You want to be credible. And then you want to lead in a way that, you know, shows people that you have the skills to do it. And that's setting the example in what we do. So you got to build your way up. It's not something that happens overnight. You got to build that credibility over time. And then when it comes to being a female leader, I mean, I don't look at myself that way. I just look at the fact that I've earned the position because I've worked hard. I have the skills, and I'm going to go out and be who I am. And I'm not going to try to be somebody else. I'm going to be me. And, you know, people talk about authentic leadership. I talk a lot about vulnerable leadership. And I think it's letting people know who you are, and letting people get to know you and being confident in who you are. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. What do you think holds women back from that authenticity?
So I will tell you, when I first took command of my first squadron, which is about 150 people, and these are men and women doing a lot of different jobs in the Air Force. And I took command of my squadron. And there was this moment during the ceremony, and keep in mind, this is a military ceremony. It is, you know, there's rules, there's structure, there's an airplane behind me, there's, you know, the American flags hanging on the wall. I have an entire squadron standing at attention and formation. So it's very structured and very serious. And during the ceremony, my 2-year-old decided that he didn't want to sit in the front row anymore with my husband, that he wanted to come up on stage. And he just kept getting closer and closer to the stage. And I'm looking at my husband, and we're trying to do this like eye communication, talking of like,
telepathically.
yes, what are we going to do? You know, my husband's thinking, well, I don't want to get up and get him because he'll throw a temper tantrum. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm supposed to be in charge and in command and control. And I can't even control my 3-year-old to get come up on stage. He eventually made his way all the way up to the stage and plopped himself down on the stage. And I thought, oh, finally, he's just going to sit there. And about 2 seconds later, he climbs up into my lap. In the middle of the ceremony, I am in uniform.
Awesome.
And I'm thinking, but what I'm thinking to myself is, what are my airmen going to think of me? Like, what are they going to think that I can't control my son? And it was just this moment of thought. I'm like, why do I even care? This is me. You know, I have a family. I can't always control everything, and this is me. And so I think sometimes we think about who we should be or what kind of leader we should be, instead of focusing just on being who we are. And I will tell you, in that moment, after the ceremony and everything was said and done, when I went out to talk to my team and visited with my airmen, I connected with them in that moment because they've been there. I mean, several of them have young kids. And so sometimes just being who you are and being authentic to you goes a long way to building that trust and creating that environment where your team feels okay to bring issues up and okay to bring new ideas to the table or take risks within an organization, because you've created an environment where you've shared a little bit about you. It's an environment of trust. And I think, you know, it's about being who you are and being true to that.
Yeah, so powerful, so incredibly powerful. So when we bring that into the time that we're in now with the pandemic and everything that's going on, and it just reminded me because we're on so many Zoom calls, right, all day long now, and people are trying to work from home, and kids are in, and pets and everything else. And so I love the fact that that's becoming more acceptable because it is real. It's real life. Everybody goes through that. And so
Right.
what message, what has been the conversation as you've been having conversations over the course of the last month or so? What What message are you giving people in this time?
So one of the things that I think about is there's so many worries, right? There's so many concerns. There's so much unknown. And sometimes we just need to take a step back and focus on what we can control, right? Focus on what's most important and what do I have control over. And I go back to my combat mission. The moment that my airplane was hit with a missile, there were so many things happening. I mean, there was lights flashing at me and noise, and my airplane is not responding. And I am, afraid, quite honestly. There's this moment of fear. And I just have to take a deep breath, focus on what is most important right now in this moment. And that is just fly the airplane, get the airplane under control. There are a lot of other extenuating circumstances. There's a lot of other things going on. There's a lot of things that I could be doing. But in the moment, I had to focus on what I could control, what was most important for me right now. And so I take that lesson to right now where there's so many struggles. I mean, trying to work from home, homeschool my kids, do all the normal stuff in a day when I have my kids at home with me is challenging. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to tell you that I learned this lesson and I do it all the time, but I have to keep reaffirming to myself when it starts feeling overwhelming and I start to have fear about the uncertainty and trying to make decisions when there's a lot of uncertainty. I just take a step back about what is most important right now and what can I control? And I try to focus on that. And if I can handle that, then I might broaden it out and think about what are the things that I don't control, but I might be able to influence. Everything else right now, it's secondary and we don't need to spend our time on it. It causes stress, it causes worry, and it's not worth it.
Yeah, very powerful just to take a breath and take a step back. Because what happens in those moments is with everything coming at us, we don't always, for me, it was a lifetime of reaction, right? Because I didn't know how to handle in those moments that stress. And so a lot of the times we react, we go into addiction. There's a lot of things that happen when we don't take a step back and just pause and think about it. So it leads me into my next question with you is there's all this stuff going on right now. It's all change. It's all different. We're all trying to manage a billion different ways of our life. What opportunities exist right now in this time?
I think there is an incredible opportunity right now for connection. And I know that may sound a little bit counterintuitive in a time we actually are struggling to connect physically, right, in the same place. But I've had an opportunity now to connect with my family in a way that I haven't, just being around my kids and my husband more, and an opportunity to be a little bit more a part of their lives. As challenging as that is, I am not cut out to be a homeschool teacher, and I'm incredibly thankful for our teachers.
Yes.
I've had this opportunity to connect and also recognize the importance of the people that normally do some of these things. I have been able to, and I've heard these stories of people having Zoom calls, whether they're Zoom happy hours with friends from high school and college that we haven't talked to in years.
So true, yeah.
Even my family, family that I don't have the opportunity to get together with frequently. And now we're teaching everybody to use Zoom. And it's an opportunity to just connect. And I hope that we talk about going back to the normal or this new normal, but I really hope that when we walk away from this pandemic, whatever that might be, and we look back, we remember these positives of connecting and reaching out to people that we haven't talked to in a long time to make sure they're okay and that they're doing okay. Why haven't we been doing that before? It's crazy.
It's so crazy.
A pandemic for us to focus on those moments of connecting with people. So I think there are positives in this. It's I guess I'm an optimist. I like, half glass full, and I really am trying to look at this as think of the positives, because quite honestly, there are a lot of negatives. And if you focus on that, again, it can feel overwhelming. Mm-hmm. You got to be aware of them to keep your family safe and to, make sure that you are making the right decisions. But that being said, there are a lot of positives right now. And if we just focus on that a little bit when we start feeling down and stressed, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, the connection thing is interesting because one-on-one, we've known about that connection. We've gotten good at that connection, but now we come and we're kind of like going back to my brother's retirement party. Like there were tears. You can be completely connected with somebody over, a Zoom call kind of a thing. It's all about intention and what you're bringing to it and all of that. So I love that you went there. What has been your biggest, so you have, your career is so dynamic and so powerful. And to have just one big leadership lesson, I know is probably a lot, but like, what's been the biggest leadership lesson in your career that you have taken with you and not strayed from?
I think the biggest thing that I have learned over, several leadership opportunities and, small size, large size, is that we need to lead with vulnerability and then accountability, right? There's two parts to this. And so by vulnerability, I mean taking the time to connect with your team, being open to uncertainty and figuring out how to get your team through those difficult and challenging times by taking smart risk. I think being vulnerable, getting to know your team, connecting with your team goes a long way to kind of setting the stage for a really positive environment where your team can excel. Yeah. At the same time, we also have to be accountable. We need to admit when we're wrong. We need to, if we make a bad decision or we make a mistake, then we step up and we own that. And that's hard to do. But when we do that and we're leading a team and we do that, then that means that our team sees that. And then they're more willing to bring small problems to the table before they become large problems for an organization. So I think the two key things for me are vulnerability and accountability. And those two things, I mean, not necessarily the keys to success, but they have been two things for me that when I use those techniques and concepts and can execute them well, then I see my team excel, right? Because it's about their performance and how well they do. And I think those two things go a long way.
Yeah, that's great. I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of leadership, because vulnerability is, I don't know if you follow Brene Brown or not, but she talks about vulnerability, and I love her work. And you've been in the military. My dad and my brothers are military. So vulnerability, talk to us about how, as we move forward in life, how leadership is evolving and vulnerability is kind of, it's really important in new school leadership, and it hasn't always been the case in old school leadership. So talk a little bit about that evolution and what your thoughts are on that.
Sure. So, especially as a fighter pilot, right, when you think of the word vulnerable, right, everybody thinks weakness. And I know Dr. Brene Brown talks about this, right?
And it's no different in business, right?
Right. And people think that vulnerability is weakness. The truth to me is it's not weakness, right? It's being open to uncertainty and risk. It's allowing yourself to connect with your team. It is, not having all the ideas or not having all the answers and then asking your team for ideas. It's admitting mistakes. And, if you make a bad decision, then you go back and you make a new one. And so I think there's a lot of pieces and parts to it. Weakness is just kind of the first thought about it, but it's not weakness. It is connecting with your team. And I think, for the military, and especially coming from that background, people hear me say lead with vulnerability, and they're thinking, why as a fighter pilot would you ever want to be vulnerable? And I think it's just kind of changing that mindset and explaining it to people in concrete ways that they can understand. It is about opening yourself up to connection. And that is the most important piece, is just, again, be who you are, open yourself up to connection, be open to uncertainty in your organization, be open to smart risk. And doing that, you create an environment of trust. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to create an environment trust, you need to lead vulnerably. And it has evolved over time. I see it. And the fact that the military is now taking this on, and you're hearing senior leaders and general officers talk about it, is really important, because it's not just about you give an order and your team follows. There are times for that, likely in combat, where there is no questions. An order is given and we execute. Mm-hmm. That's not the case all the time. And so we have to be open to thinking differently about leadership, getting outside our comfort zone, and leading with vulnerability.
Yeah, I love that. It's so powerful, so incredibly powerful. This last question, I ask everybody that comes on the podcast, and you already have left a legacy. I mean, already in your career that is over the top. And so as you transition, as you kind of go into that retirement and into your next phase of life, what is the legacy that you're aspiring to leave, Kim?
When I think about leadership, I think about, and I touched on this a little bit, but I think that we have to think differently about leadership. I mean, if you just look at the environment we're in now, we need to think differently about leadership. We have to be willing to get outside our comfort zone. And if what we're doing isn't working, then we need to try something new. And to me, that's leading with vulnerability, and that's leading with accountability. Mm. It's not easy. It can be challenging. It can feel intimidating. But it is incredibly rewarding when you connect with your team and you create an environment where they can excel. And now more than ever in this environment is the time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. I want to thank you so much for being on the show. You are fierce. You are powerful. And I love how you combine all that with just the real authentic you and being vulnerable. It's a KC killer combo. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's been so nice to meet you. So,
nice
all right, you guys, that ends this episode of Your Leadership Legacy. Join us next time. We'll see you then. Bye. My name is Tina Paulus-Krauss, and I thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. Check out our programs and events at trueyouteams.com. And until next time, make it an amazing day.